Welcome Beyond the IEP with Dr. D. Let me start with a hard truth. If we cannot clearly show student progress, then we confidently cannot say that the IEP is working. Not because we don't care, and not because we aren't teaching well, but because intentions are not evidence. Today we're diving deep into progress monitoring, what it is, how to do it correctly, how often it should occur, what to do when progress stalls, and how to clearly communicate progress to parents and the IEP team using real data. Because progress monitoring is not complete until it is shared, understood, and actionable. So let's go beyond compliance and get into clarity. What is progress monitoring? Progress monitoring is the systematic, ongoing collection and analysis of data to determine whether a student is making adequate progress toward their IEP goals. So collection is great, but if you're not analyzing it, we're really not doing what we need to do. What that analysis of data does is help us to determine, is that student making adequate progress? It answers one central question. Is the student on track to meet this goal by the end of the IEP year? It is a planned, measurable, repeatable, and directly aligned to the IEP goal. It is not a report card. It is not a general impression. It's not, well, they seem better. It is objective data tied directly to the condition, the behavior, and the criterion written within the goal. So how is this monitoring done? Well, progress monitoring must match the goal exactly. For instance, if the goal states, given a 5th grade math computation probe, the student will solve 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication problems with 85% accuracy across 3 consecutive trials. Then the progress monitoring data must measure 2-digit by 2-digit problems across repeated trials. And some common tools that could be used to do that are curriculum-based measurements, rubric-scored samples, running records, frequency counts, duration tracking, behavior checklist. All of these are items that a teacher could use to measure progress using progress monitoring. The thing is, the probes must be consistent and replicable. So if somebody else were to come in and give the student a progress monitoring, they would be following the exact same thing and they would be able to repeat what you've been doing. So what does it look like when we really analyze this data? We'll be talking about that in just a few minutes. So how often should we be doing this? Well, frequency depends on the intensity. Academic skill acquisition goals are often monitored weekly or bi-weekly. Now, behavior goals may require daily tracking. Functional goals should be monitored as that skill naturally occurs. Transition goals are often reviewed monthly. One way to remember it is the greater the need, the more frequent the monitoring. If you wait 9 weeks to discover if a student is not progressing, you've lost valuable instructional time. So what should be done with this data? Well, collecting it is not the goal. Using it is. Data should be graphed, it should be reviewed for trends, and it should be compared to expected growth. It should be used to make an instructional decision. If that student is not progressing adequately, instruction must be adjusted immediately, not at the annual review. Progress monitoring always allows us to respond in real time. Let's take a look at what good progress monitoring looks like and what should be shared with the parent and the IEP team. Let's take a look at this progress monitoring chart to determine how should we analyze data. It's all good to collect data, but if we don't analyze it, then we're really just, not doing what we need to do. So let's take a look at this progress monitoring chart. You'll notice that we'll begin with a baseline accuracy of 45%. That tells us exactly where this student is starting when we measured this skill. Each of these data points that you see represents a progress checkpoint that we've done looking at that 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication. Over time, you're going to see some steady growth that this student is making. Now, this dashed line that you see, that is the goal line. Oh, sorry, this one is the goal line. 85% accuracy is what we're aiming for. The dotted line that you see here, which is in green, is the trend line, and that shows the student's overall rate of growth over time. And it helps us to determine whether this student is making progress toward reaching that goal in the end. Next, you're going to notice that these last three data points, it shows that the student is at or above 85%. Well, that tells us that the student is making good progress on this goal and is going to hopefully reach that goal on the next probe. And this visual that I'm sharing with you is just a great way to help show that the student is making excellent progress instead of saying in an IEP meeting, oh, they're making progress, oh, they're doing well. This shows the parent and the IEP team with data that that student is making good progress and is expected to reach that goal by the end of the IEP year. This is what effective progress monitoring looks like. It's clear data, it's consistent measurement, and it's visual evidence of growth. Progress monitoring in the general education classroom is a question that comes up frequently. When goals are implemented in a general education classroom setting, well, you have to have intentional collaboration between the special education teacher and the general education teacher. And together they must determine what will be measured, how it will be measured, who will collect that data, how often will that data be embedded within classroom assignments, exit slips, quizzes, written samples, or behavior tracking forms. The systems really need to be simple and sustainable. That could be things such as shared spreadsheets, quick rubrics, digital forms, or tally sheets. Because if the system's too complicated, it's not going to get implemented consistently. Communicating progress is so important both to the parent and to the IEP team. Progress monitoring is not complete until the data is clearly shared. Parents should never receive vague statements like, always making some progress, Susie's improving, Jose's working toward that goal. Parents deserve objective information, and visual data matters. Charts and graphs show growth over time. They make trends visible. They show plateaus. And using a chart or graph builds trust with families. It also supports us because it's a defensible decision-making tool. At a minimum, parents and the IEP team should receive baseline data, current performance levels, and goal criteria. A visual graph of progress over time and an explanation of instructional adjustments helps the parents to see that the graph is being used or the data is being used to make instructional decisions for the child. Comparing progress to the expected trajectory is also very helpful because it helps us talk about instructional changes made in response to that data. And as always, transparency builds partnerships and visual clarity builds trust. What if the data shows limited progress? Well, limited progress is not failure. It is information. So we have to ask ourselves, is the accommodation being implemented consistently? Is that intervention being delivered with fidelity? Is the intensity that we're using sufficient? Does the goal need revision? Well, then we can adjust instruction, we can maybe increase our support, or we may need to reconvene the IEP team if needed to really look at that goal. Data protects students from stagnation. An IEP goal without progress monitoring is just a promise without proof. And progress monitoring without clear communication is accountability without transparency. So let's commit to both. And always keep advocating, keep learning, and keep students at the center of every decision.